Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Questionable Album Club, where a group of middle-aged Englishmen chew upon oft-maligned albums from it's mostly rock history, isn't it? In the hope of transcending some of that historical malignancy into something more palatable. On the panel today, we've got two new people today. We've got two new guests because Owen and Steve Webster can't make it. So, would you please welcome Mr. Ross English?
Hello.
Hello, Ross. Thanks for joining us. And Andrew Steen, otherwise known as Steenie. Hi, Steenie.
Good evening. How's it going?
Very good. And thanks, Steve, for joining us. And as usual, we've got Marcus Kingwell. Hello, Marcus.
Hello, Seb. Good evening, everybody.
Hello. And we've got Steve Gibson. Hello, Steve.
Hello.
And so to today's record, it's an album called DaDa, or DaDa. DaDa. I mean, usually it's DaDa as in the art movement, but Steve might have a thought on this. But DaDa by Alice Cooper from 1983, his last album on Warner's. Feels like a bit of a contractual obligation one. It's his 8th solo album, and solo album being that he went solo up until Muscle of Love. It was the band, and that dissolved. He wanted to go more theatrical. They were all too drunk and stuff. So this is his sort of 8th solo album, and his first collaboration with famous producer Bob Ezrin for 6 years. He was his famous producer, and it's. The reason I picked this one because I think it's always fun when we choose artists who are quite well known, have a big back catalogue that we will have a bit of context, a bit of an opinion of. And of course, these records, there's a whole bunch of them, aren't there? There's like, what are they called? Special Forces, Steve. What are they called? Special Forces.
The blackout era. Special Forces, Zipper Catches Skin, Flush the Fashion.
That's it.
Then Lace and Whiskey is the sort of beginning of the kind of down period, isn't it?
Lace and Whiskey was the last one he did with Ezrin, actually. So that was kind of after that. They're called blackout albums because he was claimed not to remember any of these. He can't remember. He didn't. I think he toured one of them, but he certainly didn't tour this. He's never played any songs live off this. And I just thought it'd be quite fun to take a period of quite a major artist that I'd never heard of any of these songs. So it was an experience for me. So let's start with first impressions. Marcus, tell me about what's your are you an Alice fan? And did you?
Yeah, I've got a bit of a connection with Alice, actually. It starts off early 70s when I was very little. My parents had a house party in about 1973. And they borrowed a whole load of our next door neighbour's records. The next door neighbour was a much bigger music fan than my parents. And Schools Out was on this tape, and we had 2 C90s full of great stuff. But Schools Out was there, so got to know Alice Cooper very early on from childhood. I thought this has got something about it. All good fun. It sort of disappeared really in my life for many years until Reading Festival 1987, when he headlined on the Sunday night, and he put on an amazing show. Chopped off his head and had a snake and all that sort of stuff. And he had the band members were sort of not on the stage, but they were kind of in cubby holes, a bit like that quiz show, Celebrity Squares. They were kind of dotted around, but it looked really good. And it was the first time I'd seen that kind of theatrical rock band performance. It was really good fun. So I've got a soft spot for Alice, but I wouldn't call myself a fan really. I've never shelled out my hard-earned cash for him, nor listened to an album from start to finish until this evening. So another exploration for me. This means lots of learning experiences on the Questionable Album Club, and it continues tonight. And I have to say, this is definitely the best album artwork from the entire thing. I love the way we've got that trompe l'oeil going on, the double image of this kind of skull, but it's also people's faces and stuff. I thought that's really smart. So that got me into a nice mood with it. The opening track, DaDa, I put nicely weird. I like it was odd. I wasn't really sure what to expect at this point, but it was all these sort of strange
it's an instrumental, isn't it? It's essentially an instrumental with some sort of creepy voiceover stuff.
Yeah, I thought that was quite a nice way to bring me onto it. And then it took a massive dive for me. Enough's enough. And I thought, oh God, this is what we've now got for the rest of the album. Like murky production. It sounds like a demo where they're just trying to show what the song structures are like. Awful drum machine. I think it's a drum machine. It's really sort of pedestrian, horrible, like a synthesizer you would have in a kind of school music room. I'm just like, ugh. But as I went through the album, it gently seduced me and got me back. So by the time we got to the finish, I thought there's something here which is really curious, really interesting to listen to. So yeah, I'm pleased you picked this, Seb. It's been a curiosity, and it's got also this thing. I read a little bit around it as well. This sort of claims to be, maybe it's art rock, maybe it's new wave, maybe it's rock or whatever. But it is this curious exploration of where does he want to go musically, or maybe where does the producer want it to go musically. So you've got these slightly clashing musical styles going on, or musical ideas. The old school synth and the musical theatre type chord progressions and that sort of stuff. Not 100% pulling off, but just enough to be interesting. It's sort of a bit of a blind alley musically, but curious nonetheless. So yeah, an enjoyable musical experience overall. I think I'll just leave it for now, because we're going to dive back in and do track by track, aren't we, a bit later.
We'll come back around again. It's funny you should say it's a drum machine, though. You know who plays drums on this album?
No idea.
Hands up on screen. Who knows who plays drums on this album? It's Bob Ezrin plays drums on the whole record.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Is it a drum machine on track one, though?
No, it's Bob Ezrin.
There are drum machines on it. There are drum machines.
There has to be. It's like 1983. It was the law.
Yeah.
Ezrin had all the synths. And it was basically three guys. It was Dick Wagner, him, and anyway, we'll come back to that. Ross, to you. Have you seen Alice Cooper? Do you like Alice Cooper?
I've never seen him play. I was glad you picked something from Alice, because I have listened to Alice in the past, but it's been a good couple of decades when I've really listened to it. But back in sort of like into the 80s, I went for a period when I did a bit of a deep dive into especially some of the early stuff. And yes, did like a lot of what Alice did. I quite like the balance he got between that sort of cod showman, but a knowing showmanship without tilting into utter ridiculousness that you're going to be. I felt we were all in on the joke, which is actually quite a neat trick to play off. I'd never heard this album though. I think it is DaDa, just because that opening bit with the child's name. And I mean, it's a lot of bollocks, really, I think, the album. I mean, I tried to see it as some sort of like comment on himself and his character, but really, I mean, I think, the lyrics are preposterous, and I know that complaining about Alice Cooper being preposterous is a little bit like complaining about, Mick Fleetwood being tall. It's just what he is, and you're not going to get away from that. But when the lyrics is dislove or is dyslexia is not
Ross, I think that's a bit harsh. I think, sorry to come back to you, but obviously we were going to talk about that, because that, I think, is one of the worst lyrics I've ever heard. Yeah. Okay, because I think everyone can agree it's a really shit pun.
It's a terrible lyric. The song with the lyrics.
The whole thing is just is a spectacular disaster. That song, it's just a really bad. But what sort of? I mean, the rest of the lyrics are just sort of, cod is a good word. Cod schlocky, cod horror.
I think what sort of lyrics would you
expect from Alice Cooper? What sort of lyrical content were you expecting?
Well, no, I'm fine with the lyrics being preposterous, but if you look at some of his the albums which I used to love of his, I still do. Like
you mean the band albums? Because there's a big difference, Ross, right, between the Alice Cooper band, Love It to Death, $1 Billion Babies, Killer, blah blah blah, and Welcome to My Nightmare, the solo stuff. Do you know what I mean? And that was a big, you know what I mean?
No, but I thought, you see, the thing in those LPs, even when the lyrics tipped over into preposterousness, they came with good tunes. And I think that's what's missing from this album. I mean, I did like the opening track. I thought it was very Vangelis-y. And I thought that, maybe this is a portent of something interesting. It wasn't. And I think once you take away the good tunes and you're just left with the lyrics, it sort of starts to smack as a sort of third-rate, horror musical that's been done by some Amdram society because one of their members wrote it and has nagged them into it. It's sort of sub-Rocky Horror, sub-Jesus Christ Superstar, like sub-Spinal Tap. And it's a lot of bollocks. And the annoying thing is he can do so much better with that sort of imagery he's trying to sort of like cram into really sort of a bit of a musical desert on this one.
Ross, so to play devil's advocate here, but the whole main overriding context for me of this record is he was totally fucked. He was absolutely I mean, the last song is essentially his persona killing himself. Do you know what I mean? It's like, this is shit. He didn't know. He didn't want to do it anyway. He was out. He can't remember doing it. The whole thing. Him and Dick Wagner got together in a hotel room and just wrote it over. Just he was just a mess. So and Bob Ezrin put it together with the Bob Ezrin sound. It sounds deep and rich and everything, but the songs are just. I agree with you, but I'm just giving I suppose I'm giving a bit of context.
Yeah,
anyway,
that's fine, but don't make someone pay their money to buy it. I've done drunken stuff. I don't ask people to buy it.
That's a very good point. Yeah, that is one of the strange things about that era, was you were allowed to be just completely out of it, like a drunken mess for a decade, and still just release records. Yeah, it's fine. Right, Steenie.
Yeah,
you've got this album. When did you buy it? Why? Did you like
I bought it because
etc.
But I bought it because I'm a massive Alice Cooper fan. So, I got into the Coop when it was that sort of trash era, because I was like 12 or something, or 13 when it came out. And so I heard that. And then a friend of mine at school, a kid called Damien Walker, he was massively into Alice Cooper because his older sister had this enormous record collection of insanely good rock. She had pretty much everything. She had all the Coop albums, including this one. And we just went through them all, and then I ended up buying it, being a sort of sad completist that I am. And I thought I had it on vinyl. I've got it on CD, so it means it's in the loft. So otherwise, I'd be waving the copy at you right now, which is a shame, because the sleeve is possibly the best thing about it. But I still do like this record. I was listening to it just then. I listened to it twice this evening, and I actually enjoyed it the first time, and then the second time, I was expecting to be tired of it, and I was actually, apart from dyslexia, which I think is a crock of shit. Apart from there's something interesting about dyslexia, but we'll probably move on to talking it by song, I imagine. Is that right? So I won't go too much into that, but. I actually enjoyed it way more than I thought I would, because it is one of those ones that you've got and you put away and you never listen to. You go back to the classics, and you go back and listen to $1 Billion Babies and School's Out and Killer and Love It to Death and all the early stuff. But these sort of ones, they're tarnished by reputation, and Alice Cooper's done his best to play them down over the years. I'm not sure he's played any of these songs in his live show for ever, probably, because I don't think he didn't tour this album, did he?
He didn't know. According to the internet, he's never played.
He was so far off the deep end by this point that he couldn't even get out of the house to get on a stage. I mean,
I suspect his kind of sobriety probably meant that he didn't really. There was not a good idea to revisit this era.
That's it. I mean, the reality of it was, at that time, I think, having read a few things that's in the documentaries, that he was pretty much housebound. He was like living in this mansion with no furniture in it, and all his family had buggered off. And he's massively addicted to crack by this point. He sort of tried to kick booze, and in kicking booze, he's managed to get himself addicted to the brand new hip drug crack. So apparently
in the studio, apparently there's a curtain in the studio that he'd have his crack pipe behind, and it sounds just one of those.
He'd fallen a long way by this point, and you can definitely hear it. I mean, it's all over the record. He's trying to his contribution. Obviously, he's not a musician by any stretch of imagination, so his contribution is entirely lyrical, which is probably why Bob Ezrin gets the sole credit for the intro, which I imagine Bob Ezrin put that together and said, "How about we do this?" There's a little bit of an opening bookend to the record, but Alice's sort of input is entirely lyrical, and he is just falling to bits, isn't he? It's all over the spot.
None of it makes sense. You sort of think, okay, well, it's very sort of short attention span vibe pieces, aren't they? Sort of horror vignettes that don't really go anywhere or make any sense. Agreed.
The thing I didn't realize until tonight was reading up, doing a little bit of cheating basically, and reading up on some background, was that there is meant to be a narrative thread through it of this character who's got multiple personality disorder, and that makes perfect sense musically as well, because the record does not have any kind of musical constant thread through it. Well, it kind of does, but it's you know, it's all this song has an Arabic feel. This the sweeping Lawrence of Arabia bits in Scarlet and Sheba, and then you've got this like mad, like new wavy bits, and then there's no driving musical sort of vision for it, and that's, you know, it suits that sort of multiple personality thing perfectly, because, you know, the album, the only personality that the album does have is that it is bonkers, so fits. But
yeah, sort of bonkers.
not to say I didn't like it. I bloody loved it. I was actually enjoying it immensely, and I wasn't expecting to. I was expecting to be sort of laughing through my my beard a bit at it, and you know, the silly old Alice. But miraculously, I think in some ways, and this is probably more for the concluding part of the podcast, you know, I think he manages to pull victory from the jaws of defeat with this record, because he's totally on his ass, but at the same time, it isn't totally unlistenable. I mean, it's, and you know, it's got the Bob Ezrin thing is really interesting, because when you've got Bob Ezrin producing it, you start to think of all those Floyd albums that he did towards the end, and do you see some of the Roger Waters solo stuff as well, which are essentially unlistenable albums in my opinion, absolute dog shit. And so they're not as bad as that.
No.
So
Steenie, I'm going to pause you now. I'm just going to hold those thoughts, and I'm going to come on to Steve. Mr. Gibson, what are your thoughts on this? First of all, you've seen Alice, haven't you, live a few times?
I'm going to agree with Marcus. I had a girlfriend once who really liked the Cooper, and I had to go and see him, and it was at Wembley Arena, and it was on the Trash tour, so my heart was heavy. But the man can put on a show. I was thoroughly entertained from start to finish. He had his head cut off. It was the Snake. It was people coming out with big injection thing and dragging him off, and big script. It was. I'm sad to say, during my research for this, I say research, you know, just asking around on YouTube for half an hour. There was a gig of him this year, and he's just sort of tottering around with some young people doing their sort of tragic, sort of, you know, hackneyed, off the peg rock shapes with them, and it's just, oh, how the mighty fall. But you know, for me, Alice Cooper, I sort of, you know, didn't mind, you know, don't mind the kind of early stuff, and then I was aware of Trash, and then when he obviously went on to the hair metal thing, he locked onto that and Rebirth. So I was completely unaware. Well, quite a curiosity for me. So I was completely unaware of this whole black period, this whole thing. So it was quite an interesting listen. So I listened to a bit of the other ones either side of it. And I think this is easily the best one, which isn't saying much. I got quite excited with the first track. I thought, oh, maybe this, you know, maybe through all the, because there's an interview actually, and he does. I shared a YouTube thing that came up on a fan thing I was watching as part of the research, and there is him live at this period. He did some gigs. And it's tremendous. It's all trashy. It's completely all over the shop. It's fucking brilliant. It's the best.
I saw you sent that. I haven't looked at it.
Yeah, click on it, because I mean, there's an interview as well. If you do the sidebar thing, there's an interview, sort of late night American thing at the time. And as one of the first comment is so true, it just says it's completely amazing he's still with us, because he looks like somebody should be laid on the pavement with a, you know, this close to death through crazy. Honestly, he looks so bad. It's terrible. But he's talking about, you know, he's touring at that time, so it's obviously around this period. And but the band are all out of it. But it's just so great, trashy sort of the period, sort of, you know. I thought it was great. But so this album, Curio for me, I was quite excited. But I think, and Steenie's right. One of the fan things said it's supposed to be a bit of a concept where you know, but it's sort of, even our diehard fans were saying that kind of fizzles out after about 4 or 5 songs, and then fizzles back in again for the last one or something. But yeah, I don't know. It's just from what I understand, they're all off their tits. It's the work of people who are just, their mind is on other things, shall we say? I think musically, but that's basically it. Until we go around again, I'll talk more about the music if you like. But I haven't really got much more to say about Alice Cooper, except for the fact it's been a very enjoyable and, for me, interesting dive into a period of a big artist that I didn't really know existed. For me, I just thought, he probably just did a couple of shit albums, and you can totally see it. sort of hair metal comes out, and it's, oh, look at me, I'm sort of doing raise your fist and yell and all the rest of it, which is dreadful as well. Listen to a bit of that. What is dreadful? Anyway, I'll talk more about the music when we go around again. But, yeah.
Very good, very good, very good. I suppose I had a similar thing. I had that. Do you remember that Alice Cooper's Greatest Hits record?
Yeah.
With that cover that used to go all the way around.
Yeah.
I think everyone used to have. And that was my sort of introduction to Elected and Hello Hooray and all that sort of stuff. And loved it, but didn't really get into the albums until later. Was aware of Welcome to My Nightmare, blah 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 blah. Funnily enough, he's one of the few artists that I have that, to me, Killer is one of those perfect albums. You know, it's even more perfect than Pet Sounds. Pet Sounds is probably my favorite rock pop album, but Killer to me is just it's a perfect piece of art. It's by far the best Alice Cooper product to me. It's completely amazing.
What's on that? Any big ones on there?
Under My Wheels. Lots of big ones. And so same. I didn't know this period. Hadn't listened to it at all. Was aware that it was the sort of really drunk period. He couldn't remember it. And listening to it, first time I listened to it, I thought it was just so awful. It was just so dirty. It was everything was just a slow tempo. It felt just like it was falling apart the whole time. Nice production. Bob Ezrin, obviously, he knows how to produce a record. But the songwriting, when Enough's Enough starts, it's in that major key, jagged, ploddy. It's just enough's enough. It's just like, fuck yeah, no, it's such bad. It's so bad. Do you know what I mean? It's such a downer. You know, track 2 should be going, because I agree. The first instrumental, right? It's a vibe. It's kind of quite that kind of gothic vibe, and it's quite atmospheric. And the voice comes in. It's kind of like, okay, where's this going to go? It's quite long, right? And then enough's enough. Fucking hell. And then Formerly Warmer starts, right, with that beautiful little keyboard motif. And you think, oh, this is, and then it's all, I suppose it's quite fun. Dyslexia's awful. Scarlet and Sheba is just comically Eastern. And then I Love America. We haven't talked about I Love America. The only single released off it and came out in the UK and charted. It actually charted in the UK. Charted number 93 in the UK. And that's the only chart or single position of anything off the record, which I think is just wonderful. A satirical, well, you know the bit in I Love America where it suddenly goes Indian.
Yeah,
the Indians suddenly come in, and it kind of goes this Indian music, and then they go again, and it comes back to I Love America. It's like Blazing Saddles or something. It's very. He
says that, doesn't he? Say, "Here come the Indians," and then they go.
And then the music stops, and Indian music comes in, and you hear whoa, 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 and the Indian music goes on, and then it stops, and it comes back to the song. It works for me. But then suddenly you got the last song, Pass the Gun Around, which is a song about somebody who wakes up super hungover in a hotel room. They've lost everything. They're in a complete state. They're wits end, you know. And it's pass the gun around, take another shot, and it's just an incredibly beautiful, self-aware piece of music, which is just like, oh my god, it's almost as if, yeah, I've done this album. It's shit. I know it's shit. And I'm fucking out, and here's a vaguely elegiac song about me wanting to kill myself because I know how shit I am and how washed up I am, and then it's all a waste of time, and it finishes with a big fucking bang, you know what I mean? And then he goes quiet, sobers up, you know, for 3 years, then comes out with, you know, this hair metal bollocks with Kane Roberts with his machine gun guitar.
Oh yeah.
But funny enough, and I'll shut up in a second. But so first time I listened, I thought, oh god, you know, what a weird record, terribly. The pacing's awful. The songs are just nothings. They're just big farts. And until the last song, which I felt Pass the Gun Around, I thought was this really beautiful, moving, incredibly self-aware piece of music. And you sort of think someone like Alice Cooper doesn't really do self-aware. He does every now and again. But then I've listened to it subsequently 3 or 4 times, and like Steen, every time I listen to it again, I think, oh, I quite like this. And even Enough's Enough now, I'm like, I quite like this. I don't know why that is. I don't know why. I don't know why. It hasn't transcended into, oh, I'm digging it. But I guess familiarity breeds some sort of fondness, I suppose. I don't know. But yeah, so I enjoyed it slightly. Doing this, the way we listen to music, you know, listen to these albums over and over and then talking about it, you develop quite unusual, unique relationships with records that you don't normally in our lives, right? We're all in our 50s, I think, and perhaps Steenie. And you don't listen to music like this anymore. You just don't. You don't put a record on and then listen to it critically and then put it on again, and then talk about it. So we've got these really we've talked about really weird records that you wouldn't normally talk about. So for better, for worse. Anyway, let's go a little bit deeper into the record, but we're not going to do track by track because it's just too fucking boring because no one cares. Marcus.
Well, much to my frustration, I find myself agreeing with Seb on which I hardly ever do actually on these things.
That's true.
So it's yeah, I've a couple of highlights. I love America. I thought it was genuinely funny, and it had me riveted to the lyrics. In fact, I got them on Spotify where you can read them out as well, just to sort of cross-reference. I thought that was brilliant. I think Alice Cooper should revive that one and play it live if he's got the nerve. I mean, in the current climate as well, it's just as relevant. I think it's just fabulous. Similarly, Pass the Gun Around, I thought was fantastic. I love the sound effects it had at the beginning. I felt it had a bit of a sort of David Bowie feel of about the same era. You could see that being, you know, maybe a little tucked away album track of David Bowie, but really maudlin feel to the whole song. You know, quite special. And yeah, that was a highlight. And I suppose that's why, from my early comments, you know, I liked the open track DaDa. I saw this massive dip for track 2, the Enough's Enough, and then gradually, gradually, it's basically the last 3 tracks I'm sort of pulled back in a little bit. So that's the kind of feeling I got with it. I'm just going to say, I don't know, something with dyslexia. I mean, lyrically, it's just appalling. But there's a kind of, it's the Gary Newman bit to it that actually I quite like. There's a sort of, it's the way the keyboards are further forwards, and it actually is bringing on the darker side of the synthy music of that era, which was I quite like Gary Newman and that sort of thing back at that time, which really worked for me. So it's like a little fragment where you think that's familiar and that's likable within this other kind of mess that's going on. So yeah, a little kind of summing up there for that one. I mean, I am surprised at in this era that he hadn't cottoned on to heavy metal as a genre to connect with, because he was from, I suppose you would call it hard rock, wouldn't you, from his 70s stuff. And it's a pretty small step to come into 80s metal, which by 83, well, we went into the full chart-bound singles hair metal, but it was still there as a big live music force. And I thought joining the dots to make that happen should have been easy for him or for Bob Ezrin to make this a kind of just arrange the songs a bit differently, mix them a bit differently, and try and make a commercial heavy metal album of its day. But that, you know, somehow they missed on all that. I mean, the curious sort of loop we've got here is, I think Steenie was saying there's this kind of High School Musical feel to some of the songwriting, and this, you know, this old-fashioned thing. And of course, we've got this connection back on the Questionable album cover a few-ish episodes ago. It might have been one of the ones which never was committed to a recording, but we reviewed Get Jack, the musical about Jack the Ripper, which was written by Damien Gray and Kip Winger. Kip Winger went on to play in Alice Cooper's band, play bass. So we've got this little circle going on here of connection, which I think is rather sweet. So I think, yeah. So I think that's probably all I've got to say about it. Yeah, I finished up feeling a lot more sympathetic to the album than when I started. Might even have another dip into it in a few days' time to see if there's a bit more that comes out. Oh, the one thing I would disagree with you, Seb, is I think the production's terrible. I mean, I know Bob Ezrin is an absolute legend, and he should know what he's doing, but I just think it's all over the place sonically. The mixing was all over the shop. He hasn't got the energy of the performances out for the musicians, apart from probably Pass the Gun Around and I Love America. It feels like no one's really been G'd up to play well on this stuff. But yeah, that's it from me.
Thank you, Marcus. Ross, have you got anything good to say about this at all, mate? Curmudgeon the old can.
Jack, he's a naughty one, Saucy Jack. I think I had a sort of like opposite reaction to it seems everyone else did, in that I thought the most interesting listen was the first one. And I think I was trying to piece together what he was doing, and I get with the caveat he was drunk, he didn't know what he was doing, but it's like, you know, there was some really odd stuff, like the track where he's a Santa Claus and then runs away with a woman, and then the earlier track where I think his mother dies and his father puts him on the game, but I wasn't entirely sure if that what was going on. So there was these sort of lyrically this stuff going on, and then I Love America comes in, which I think, yeah, great. I think that's the you know, that's the track that makes the most sense here. I mean, I think some of the analogies are a little bit ham-fisted, but you know, I think it's there. And there's something I'm wondering what that's got to do with the other stuff. And I thought that this is where I was starting to think, actually, is there a sort of statement here? You know, are we going back to his days when he was, you know, Zappa's protege, and you know, and there's some sort of artistic thing here, and it's called DaDa. And I was sort of quite, you know, I was intrigued, even though disappointed by the music. But by listen 2 or 3, I just couldn't wait for some of those songs to be over, you know. And it was I thought it, you know, there wasn't what I was looking for it. And I think the musical theatre comes. I mean, there's a number of them you can just see they're sort of set up, you know, if he knew what he was doing, to be the last number on the stage, you know, where everyone comes out. I think it was a Scarlet and Shade. You know, it ends with a sort of arm waving chorus where I almost got my cigarette lighter out at one point. So I know I get what people are saying, but I found it the other way around. I thought it was interesting, and then I listened to it a lot, and I don't think I will be revisited it again. And I don't think Dyslexia is the lyrical low point on the album. I think he goes a little lower at some points.
I'm intrigued. Where do you think goes lower than that?
I wrote my least favourite down. From Fresh Blood. In the paper, seems a florist found in Lincoln Park, died of some anemia. No one raped her. Paul Dolores. I mean, I don't know if that's just in terrible taste or just doesn't make any sense. You know,
Both.
Difficult to argue there, isn't it?
Although I would say that in Fresh Blood, the phrase "sanguinary feast" did make me chuckle, and I did enjoy that.
But can I just say, I've got the lyrics to Dyslexia here. They think this is the chorus. They think that I got dropsy. Is this love or is dyslexia?
Dropsy is like edema, isn't it? It's like fluid on your joints.
Yeah,
so obviously not dyslexia,
but it's not exactly.
But he's dyspraxic, if anything, because he's clumsy, isn't he? He keeps bumping into people. That's dyspraxia.
Dyspraxia is numbers,
isn't it? No, I thought dyspraxia is movement, isn't it?
No, I think anyway. Well, let's.
Is there a doctor in the house?
Park this
questionable medicine club here.
Yeah.
Anyway, Steen, you were talking. What do you want to give us a bit of a deeper dive on your thoughts on the record, particular
on the
favorite
whole
songs?
album, on the album as a whole? I made like quite a lot of notes actually, but could go on for hours. I think going to what Marcus said about the production, I think the big production disappointment for me was definitely the first song, other than musically Enough's Enough, the song being a bit like what's that Kids Bugsy Malone? It was like something like that. Enough's enough. The production of that is so weak after that first, because it wouldn't listen to it, like I would probably listen to it, and the production on the first track is like the and all the bangs and the noises. It's very like high def, and then Enough's Enough comes in really quietly, like a real wet fart, and then it does open up when it gets to the chorus, and it is that classic start low and build it up. But really, they shouldn't have done that. But it doesn't excuse the fact that that is the weakest song on the record by quite a long way. So why it was placed so early on the record, who knows? It's clearly the weakest record. The only good thing in it is actually Dick Wagner does a really cool solo, and then there's like that synth solo that comes against it. There's like dueling. I thought it was a synth guitar to start with, but I think it is a Ezrin on the Oberheim, isn't it, or someone? So it's like, and I quite enjoyed that. It's a nice bit of 80s.
I think like 80% of the record is Ezrin, Wagner, and Cooper. I think it's just.
Oh yeah, I mean they would just have dragged the Coop in just to do his vocals. Like, I imagine he was even present for half of this record. Not physically and mentally. They're obviously chasing that 80s thing, aren't they? I mean, you talk like when Marcus was saying about why didn't they go hair metal or go for the metal thing? They're chasing the other zeitgeisty thing, which is the synthy electronic thing, which loads of bands were doing at the time. And there's one song, it's the verses in Scarlet and Sheba. I wrote this down as a note. It's got this sort of like ding 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 rhythm that goes on, where it's very electronic, and it's like there's about 3 songs I can think of that had this sort of vibe to it. and they were like Steel Monkey by Jethro Tull, which is, don't even know that song, of Crest of a Knave. But that's got this kind of, where they'd sort of heard a ZZ Top album and thought, fuck it, that's the way to go. Ditch the flutes, get the synths out. And then there's and it also, like, when Rush went really, really synthy, like Big Money, you know, that tune and all that. It reminded me a bit of that, and same, and also I wrote down Cloak and Dagger Man by Camel, which is a really weird and obscure reference to a song that probably no one's even heard because it's crap, basically. But it's the same thing where bands for the 70s were like, right, this is the way to go. And we're going to do it, like, we're going to use synths and drum machines, but because we've done everything, big heavy guitars, big heavy drums, it's going to sound as lumpy as you like, because it's all just everything pushing at the same time. And that's where they went with it. And yeah, Formerly Warmer, weirdly, when me and my mate, I was on about my mate Damien, when we were into the Coop big time, we made a compilation, and we sort of had this rule where it was like two good songs off every album. And by the time we got to like Zipper Catches Skin and Flush to Fashion and that, we were absolutely dying. You know, we couldn't think. We was just squeezing on. You know, it was really the dregs. But we did put on Formerly Warmer and I Love America. I remember those are the songs that went on that tape from this album, and they're kind of the standouts. Obviously, I Love America is the big standout, and it was the single, and it's still massively relevant. Nothing's changed in 40 years since that, 41 years since the record came out, and all of those stereotypes about your sort of Midwest American bang on, even as ham-fisted as some of it is, and the like classic misrhyme at the end where it's like I love my car, I love my truck, I love a waitress who loves to flirt, or something, isn't it?
I mean, it's a joke, yeah.
Yeah, and it's great. It works.
Really. I love waitress who likes to flirt.
Like
a rim shot.
Every line ends in a rim, and
even that one.
But yeah, I think you can see where they're going with a lot of this stuff, but it isn't Alice Cooper's vision, is it? He's a slave to the musical whims of like Dick Wagner and Bob Ezrin.
Talking about that, and talking about, I think, addressing what Mark is saying about why didn't Cooper go metal here. I think that Ezrin, he had a lot of synthesizers. He had his studio in Ontario, middle of nowhere, and he had a lot of these modern synths. Also, you have to remember, do you know what album that Ezrin had just made just before this? And you'll know what he just made.
The Elder.
It was The Elder, music from The Elder. Of all the apples. So he's probably thinking, I probably won't do another metal album for a while. I'll probably just, do something else. Get the synths out, you know what I mean? Lay low for a couple of years. Like, so I suspect that metal was nowhere near fashion. Ezrin was trying to be a modern producer. Being a modern producer wasn't, Screaming of Vengeance sounded brilliant, but it wasn't modern widescreen, bolts and whistles production. So I suspect it was just the zeitgeist. Metal really was I don't know, for someone like Ezrin, who saw himself as a kind of like a
pipe smoking Renaissance man.
Yeah, he was certainly metal became a money, a money chasing game, didn't it? But at that time, it probably wasn't. It was trying to look for something kind of with the artistic integrity and creativity, whatever. I don't know. But then only 3 years later, he did, obviously. Marcus, when you saw him at Reading, was that Ken Roberts when they all in the?
It was, yeah, and it was, yeah. He had the Europe machine gun guitar. It was a guy with big muscles, I think, wasn't he?
That's right, like Rambo. Yeah. Rambo with a machine gun.
He was. I mean, it was just like fantastic. It was funny.
He came back and he played with him just recently, just a few years ago. Ken Roberts came back and did a tour with him.
Fantastic. How does he look?
I can't remember.
Really thin, probably.
Yeah. I think he's had quite a lot of health issues. I can't remember.
Okay.
But yeah,
well, I wish him all the best. Yeah.
That song, the song we were on about before, with the plot of Bad Santa, basically, that the one where he's the Santa Claus who ends up offending all the families never enough with that woman. That song, that gives the sound of that tune. I wrote down Billy Squier on that, right? Because that how massive Billy Squier was in like 1982, 83, and that big beat that song, No Man's Land, sounds exactly like a Billy Squier song. And that was produced by Mac, wasn't it? Produced some of those Queen records, and it's got that big drum sound. And that's just got that same vibe to it, that tune, No Man's Land. I wrote down Bad Santa, exclamation mark. Billy Squier, great solo, I wrote. I think it's got a great solo. It must have. I mean, Dick Wagner's a great guitar player.
He is good. Yeah, I like the solo in. I'll keep going about this song in Pass the Gun Around. It starts off really bad, like as if he's kind of aping the sort of emotional makeup of the protagonist, and then it suddenly gets really good, and it's like, oh my god, it's like, there is redemption somewhere, but that's guitar solos, redemption. Steve, have you got any more specific track comments before we go on to Mr. Gibson?
Well, I actually did. I know that everyone else didn't enjoy this, but I actually did enjoy Scarlet and Sheba, elements of it. I didn't like the chorus particularly, but I kind of like the Cod Lawrence of Arabia vibes.
You like the scale?
I quite enjoyed that little bit of, and then when it went into that sort of Steel Monkey rhythm that I was on about before, I was kind of enjoying it. I was kind of like, this is it. It falls over badly in the chorus. That's the thing, and there's not. Yeah, it needed polish. I think that's the problem, isn't it? There wasn't enough care put into it.
Exactly.
It's a good bit.
Yeah.
It is a proper curate's egg. I mean, all the songs are. It's that's a really like you're just getting into it, and then a bit comes in and you're like, lets the tires down a bit, and you're like, oh.
Nothing really develops in an interesting way, does it? That's the thing.
That's it. But nothing upset me on it. I was expecting to go back to it and actually be and expected to be genuinely let down, disappointed by some of this record, because I hadn't listened to it for so long, and I know that in the grand scheme of things and in the Coop canon, it's a bit of a it's generally one of the black sheep. It's sort of shunned a little bit, and certainly by him, but mostly because he doesn't even remember making it. And I think some of this stuff would still work. He could get away with doing I Love America live. Formerly Warmer would work live, but he's got so many of those kind of like music box style songs where it starts off with a sort of slightly creepy tinky music box thing. There's loads of the songs like Stephen, Wind Up Toy, all of those tracks all throughout his career. He's had all, that's a theme, and Formerly Warmer follows that exact formula. So it's Formula Warmer. I just thought of that. But it is basically that is Coop by numbers, but it would still work. You could easily substitute any of those songs. If he was going to do Stephen live, you might as well do Formerly Warmer.
Quite. Maybe we should start an email petition.
Yeah, well, he's probably not got long, has he?
I think he's touring in the UK at the moment. We're strangely current.
Yeah,
for once. I'll stop there for a minute, Steenie.
Yeah, no worries. I can go for hours.
Yeah, I know that, mate. I know that. Mr. Gibson.
Well, I'm gonna sort of mostly agree with Ross on this one. I think I was waiting for the next track. I kept thinking, is the fucking Time Warp going to come on?
I'm hoping that was going to happen.
No, I certainly wasn't. The one out of my little notes I've made. First, I didn't particularly enjoy I Love America. It's so ham-fisted. It's funny for like 2 seconds, but it's like, sub-sixth form view of American foreign policy. Yeah, it's shooting fish in a barrel. Fresh Blood. I've written. If in some bizarre parallel universe this album went mega, I'm sure Peter Gabriel will have a few words about Sledgehammer with the start of Fresh Blood, because it just seemed like Sledgehammer to me.
Well, he must have ripped
I'm not saying Gabriel ripped it off.
Yeah, 85.
Well, who knows?
Isn't it? There you go.
Who knows? He might have heard it and kept it in the back of his mind. Apart from that, it's just this, like, I think what you've said most of it. There's no care. It's half-assed. They're all pissed. I did like I did make a note about the guitar playing. I thought the solos were nice on this, and I actually quite liked Enough Is Enough. When that came in, I thought it's actually quite catchy. Okay, we might be in for a bit of a catchy record, and then that Enough's Enough is laboured and laboured and laboured and laboured. Yeah, it's just a bit like, but what to hark back to that gig I posted from YouTube on at this period, it kind of like ramped it up for me because I just love the whole messy trashiness of it compared to the slick what heavy metal and rock's become now, but it's just too slick and choreographed. Everyone falling over themselves and looking around at what we're doing now. So it's just brilliant. It's just that's what rock and roll is about, really.
We should put that video in the comments of the YouTube.
Yes, yeah. Apart from that, really, you've kind of I'm pretty much in the Camp Ross on this one. Yeah, I can't will I listen to it again? No, you know. Well, am I glad that it kind of happened and I did hear it and I'm aware of this period? Yes, because it's been a bit curate's seg, an interesting thing, but let's face it, it's they're all off their tits. It was fulfilling. It just sounds like there's just no care. And Steenie summed it up. There's which one is it? When they have a stab at, oh shit, it's sort of like, there's people are doing this stuff now that's come popular. We better have a go at doing this sort of new wave sound, and it's all just a bit half-assed, and And I did in the fan things. They were saying that there was interviews with people who were working in the studio at the time, and they said it was all they all seemed fine. They weren't like rolling around the floor, cracked off their tits. They were just that they were laughing and joking and seemed to be getting on. So I don't know, to actually not remember making an album. Half of me thinks I don't believe that. Then the other half of me thinks when you see that interview, see the physical state of him, I think, yeah, maybe. But there we are. So it's a bit. I would say so far probably the kind of strangest, on a personal level, not the strangest product, but the strangest one to listen to and think about and get my head around. And
I agree with you. I felt the same. I didn't know how to feel about it, really.
No, so that's what I've got to say. So yeah, move on to Scores on the Doors or whatever you want to do. And everyone's got anything else to say, sort of.
Yeah, indeed. We're into final straight on this. So we'll do. So summing up, a subjective conclusion and a mark out of 100, please, Marcus.
A curiosity out of 100, 33 and a third.
33.3. Thank you very much, Ross.
Well, thank you for reminding me of Alice Cooper, though, because on the back of listening to this, I have gone back and revisited some of those albums I liked very much and found that mostly I still like them very much. This, I just, I listened to it twice again today and I'm pretty much filled with ennuis through it. So I'm going to go for 17.
Thank you, Ross. Steenie?
So, my mark out of 100?
Yes, please.
I'm giving this a solid 56. And that is based on a calculation I've just done of what I marked each song out of 10. So everything
good. So that's
finally someone's putting some thought into it.
So there's 9 songs on it, and so mathematic jiggery pokery, I've come up with 56, and I think that's a reasonably accurate for my feeling of it, because it's just on the positive side. I did enjoy it. I will listen to it again, I think. And there's certainly a couple of songs on there that I think, with a bit of spit and polish and a bit of a rethink, could have been potentially really good.
So if anyone could give a shit, yeah.
Well, that's exactly it. So I'm giving a 56 for that. And as a final comment, I think what is really amazing is in the narrative of the coup, that you end on such a downer here with Pass the Gun Around, where he is absolutely on his ass, and then you have that 3-year period, and if he'd have died at that point, everyone would have gone, well, the clues are all there, everyone knew. But then he comes back and he's like this Superman, and all of a sudden, Constrictor and Raised Fist in Yellow are terrible albums, but he has this new persona, the new improved persona of 70s Alice, but 80s up, and he's like the bloody Terminator, and all of a sudden you've got this Superman. He's overcome those demons, and he's never been back as low as that again. But I mean, blame religion or whatever it is, or just strong will, but it's an interesting little bookend to a period there, because it could have gone either way. And
Yeah, I thought that. I thought the same. That they could so easily have this could have been the last one, and could have been a sort of just a tragic damp squib.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Mr. Gibson, something else to score, please.
Curate's Egg, enjoyed the little delve into this. Won't listen to it again, but I have preferred it to everything he's ever done since, probably. So I'm giving it 41.
Interesting. I agree with everybody else. I enjoyed a couple of songs, and I'm going to give it 40. So that hang on, I'm going to because we often have this point of the evening. I'm often saying, "Hey, we've got a calculator."
It's a really slick part of the evening, isn't it?
I have one here, so I'm just going to kind of do the 17 plus 56 plus 41 plus 40 equals divided by 5. So it gives a mean score of 800. Oh, for Christ's sake!
Wow.
Can someone else do this, please?
No.
I'll
do it under pressure.
Marcus, I'll do it. I'll do it properly, right? Because
all right, I'll do it at the same time as you. Okay, we'll do a double act. What's the numbers?
Okay, right. 33.3.
Yeah.
It's your fucking decimal that's fucked this up.
Just leave it out.
17.
Yeah.
56. 41. And 40.
No, that's not right. I've got 187. That can't be right.
Anyway, I'll tell you what we'll do.
It's proven to be better. Mathematically, it's better.
Actually, it probably is right. 37.4 I've got.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll do it again. Well, Marcus, it's your turn to choose the next album. So while you explain what the album is and why, I will redo the math. So the floor is yours, my friend.
Okay. Well, I've gone for something this time that's less obscure, I think, than what we tend to have picked things that are oddballs within an artist's career. I'm picking one for a completely different reason. I was given a CD about 15 years ago by my brother-in-law who worked for Universal Music and used to get some freebies. And I just thought it was so terrifying. I never actually unwrapped it, and I haven't played it. So now's the perfect opportunity. It's called God Hates Us All by Slayer. And so that's what we've got to listen to for next week. I've never listened to a whole Slayer album all the way through.
What?
And no, I haven't. So it's just another journey in discovery.
They're only 25 minutes long.
I was going to say Rain in Blood is shorter than a Led Zeppelin song.
Yeah.
Wow. There we go. That's going to be number 2 for me. God Hates Us All.
Very good.
Enjoy.
Good. I know several people on the panel who I can see now who know this album very well. Not you, Ross. Don't worry. Not you, Ross. No, Ross is looking very confused. Like
Slayer? Who is it Slayer you don't speak of?
Okay, brilliant, fantastic. I think that's everything. Well, thank you, thanks everybody. That was good fun. And Marcus, I did the maths while you were doing that, and I agree with you. I've came up to the similar conclusion. 37.4. Okay, which puts it. That puts it number 4 on our all-time top 10. So that comes in between Tin Machine number 2 and Saved by Bob Dylan.
I think that's a respectable showing.
Yeah. Right, that's it. I think we've got the next one thing. Yeah. So thank you, Steenie and Ross. Please do come again.
Thank you.
No, so much for filling in. And Steenie's today at such short notice. You only were asked this afternoon, so bless you, mate. Thank you.
No, thanks a lot.
Thank goodness you already had the album, right?
Well, yeah, I already had it, and thanks for making me listen to it again, because I would probably put money on the fact that I never would have listened to the album again, despite owning it and enjoying it as much as I did. And
Ross, would you like to also to thank us for making you listen to it several times?
I'd like to thank you all for many things, but that might not be one of them.
Okay, thanks everybody. Thanks, Marcus.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve, and I will see you all down the brook tomorrow night for wine and tea.
Absolutely, yeah. All right.
Let's get in there.